Welcome to Envision More. Here, we dig deep into the insights of first-generation wealth builders, unearthing stories of passion, resilience, and relentless vision. Your host is Wayne Wagner Jr., founder of Visionary Wealth Management. So sit back and dig in. It's time to envision more.
Welcome to another episode of Envision More. I'm Wayne Wagner, the president of Visionary Wealth Management. Today, I'm joined by Rachel Rivest and Steve Averbuch, and there are few couples in the world that have taught me more. Steve and Rachel and I go back 20 years or so at this stage and working together professionally. And Steve and Rachel have just been a robust friends and a relationship that where I have gotten to engage with people who have very different values, very different worldview, but really have a huge heart to make the world a better place. And they spent their careers driving outcomes for patients in the pharmaceutical industry, in the oncology space. And now, as they're both retired after finally finishing up a big construction project on their retirement home, they're really focused on adding value and advancing organizations and institutions that are aligned with their values and the worldview that they have. So, Steve and Rachel, thank you so much for being here. It's going to be a real pleasure to have this discussion.
It's our pleasure.
Thanks, Wayne. And I have to clarify, we're into our 26th year of a relationship. So
that makes me way older than I should be then. So I didn't realize I started working when I was 14. So yes. Unfortunately, that's all too true for all of us, isn't it? So
Yes.
yeah, that's for sure.
May and I are hitting 30 years of marriage this year. What year are you guys on?
We just celebrated our 30th anniversary of our first date, which we that's what the milestone that we look at more than the actual date of our wedding.
Right. Now you guys were so 30th anniversary of your first date, but you guys were, you were heavy into careers when you met each other, right? So you guys figured out how to do two heavy duty careers for a while together.
Very much so.
Right? Yeah. So
yeah, for a while until I left. I was in a biotech company and I left and decided to go backpacking around the world. So
Is that before or after the marriage?
That was before.
It was before the wedding.
But after we met.
Okay.
After our first date, she decided to go backpacking around the world. So you can make the
connection.
The connection.
Yeah. And I think it's somewhere in that storyline, you chased her down halfway across the globe, right,
Something
Steve?
like that. Yeah. Said, come back with me. So
and I did.
That's great.
She did.
It's an amazing origin story.
Yeah.
So that's great. Good stuff. And Steve, you spent so Rachel, you spent years in biotech advancing, clinical oncology drugs, right?
I started in big pharma and worked for several companies, and then I worked in a biotech company.
Okay. And Steve, you spent your whole career in big pharma, right?
Well, I've been doing cancer research over 40 years, both throughout my education and training. I'm a medical oncologist, and I actually spent several years as a faculty member at Mount Sinai Medical School.
Okay.
So seeing patients, faculty practice, but the real passion and my real talent was in performing clinical investigations of new therapies in patients. And I found that the best place to do that was in big pharma. It had the resources, it had the drugs that we could develop that could really make a difference. So I spent 30 years in big pharma as a R&D research and development senior executive, leading teams that I'm very proud to say contributed to meaningful therapeutic advances in cancer that has impacted thousands and thousands of patients. So worked for good companies, had the right people around me, was quite driven. And I was a bit of a workaholic, a 24/7 workaholic during those years, but it was all for the right reasons.
That's why you came home one day and Rachel had gone backpacking.
something like that. Yeah.
So we had a conversation with a couple on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and he said he came home with the biggest bonus check he'd ever gotten, and she sat him down and said, "We need to talk. We have 5 girls at home, and I feel like a single parent." And so it's
Yeah. 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 We had, so we've been together 30 years. As we said, Rachel's not my first wife, but she's my best wife. And we do have a son who's 26 years old. So we had a little bit of that same syndrome of an absent dad and husband during
Mm,
the height of my working life. But
yeah.
we were both quite occupied in
Yeah.
our respective activities, and I think that's when we engaged you, Wayne, because our our finances were not our focus. I mean, we were very
Mhm.
cognizant of the need to have set up long-term financial goals and for the family and for our future and for our son's future, but we weren't. Um, we
We
didn't.
weren't that interested in doing it.
Yeah, not
Right.
not interested in taking active management of it. So we really needed to have a financial planner who understood us, understood what we were doing professionally, but also understood the right balance of how much we would engage actively in the
Yeah.
management of our finances and how much we could rely on you to sort of carry us through. So I
Yeah.
think that was the foundation of our relationship and how we viewed our finances while we were both preoccupied with our professional and personal lives.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I had to get used to early in my career was the fact that our best clients they really were delegators, and you were delegating to us, and so to a point where for I would talk to other advisors and they'd say, well, if a client's not returning your phone call or returning an email, then they're probably going to fire you pretty soon, because that was their experience. And for us, our clients were just doing business and doing life. Their career and advancing therapies for patients and taking care of life at home and kids and family, those were the priorities. And so it still to this day is commonplace. I'll email a client, 3, 4, 5 times. I got an email back from a client this morning that I emailed him 7 weeks ago, and he just got back to me. And it's just, and I have to, be comfortable with enough with the relationship that, oh no, Steve and Rachel aren't talking to some other financial advisor, are they? Um, but it's a level of confidence on both of us. So you have confidence in us that we're doing what we're supposed to do, and then we have confidence in you that you're not. We don't have to feel like we're constantly defending, our need to be your financial advisor, because we're working together. This is, we're on a journey together, and so that's a fascinating part of my own journey with, in the pharma space, is that clients just are doing things that are more important than what I represent. I'm a support player to really their goals. Your goals and dreams and aspirations are the focus. Um, so appreciate all of that. As you have, as you hit your peak earning year, Steve, we did some planning on the philanthropic side. We put some money aside into some vehicles that allow you guys to give. And I love, some of it's moment in time, right? The Supreme Court makes a decision on an important issue, and the next day I see a request come through for an organization that is, going to support the people who are directly impacted by that decision. So some of it's that, but a lot of it is these big core values, worldview values. And can we maybe talk a little bit about what some of those, as you think about philanthropy, as you think about giving and supporting organizations that are going to make the world a better place, what are some of those areas that you guys focus on?
You want to go?
So yes, so big things that are important to us are for me it's nutrition, health, agriculture, finding a better way to provide the food that everyone needs
Mhm.
without destroying the earth. Second one, of course, is climate change. That's a big issue, and there are many, many ways to approach that. depending on your other values. For us also, education is a huge value for us, for people who are underserved, and with a little help, they get the right nudge and ability to take off with their own lives.
Yeah.
So, and of course, women's rights and social issues, simple things in some of the areas, like feeding people in areas of crisis. So those are some of the big ones. And as you said, some of it is just a given for us, and some of it is dependent on what's going on in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
good.
and I would just add a few just to amplify those. Those are our priorities. I'm not as focused on the nutrition and health aspects, but climate change and the environment and health is where I've put my focus on environmental issues, and that's probably our highest priority is the environment, and doing what we can to help mitigate the impact of climate change for us now and for our future generations. More importantly, the educational aspect around really focusing on underserved populations, giving them opportunities that they wouldn't have because of their circumstances. First generation young people, people of color, people coming out of educational systems like the Philadelphia school district that just doesn't have resources to give them the foundation to succeed at a higher in a higher learning institution, and all the social causes, a number of social causes focused on freedom, on individual freedoms essentially, and support. Whether it's the American Red Cross or the World Central Kitchen, disaster relief, things like that. But those are the types of organizations that we have focused in on. And our charitable giving has evolved over time. At first, when we were pre-retirement, we just did it somewhat in a reflexive way, not with a lot of thought. We'd go to Charity Navigator and see the ratings and just we maybe
double check.
And we gave small amounts to maybe 50 organizations or 30 organizations. Since retirement, we've done a lot more homework to come up with a what we think is a more robust strategy to understand the organizations we're giving to refine the number to a smaller number, but then to give more generously to those organizations. And it's really based on our values and our priorities, philanthropic priorities, but also on ensuring through our due diligence that our money is going to have impact. So we're looking for data. We're looking for metrics of achievement from these organizations, before we write the check year on and year out. So we could spend more time doing more work, but that's sort of how we're approaching it now. And I think going forward, we'll continue to be diligent about our philanthropic direction.
Yeah. And let me ask get granular on a couple of these. I know you mentioned the Philadelphia School District, and I know that that's an area in terms of mentoring. It wasn't just writing a check. You actually have a young guy who's basically a second son that you've poured into and partnered with and mentored for years and years at this stage, and continue to pour into him now that he's in his professional life. What was that organization, and what does that organization continue to pair professionals with kind of those first generation kids?
Yes, the organization it's now called Heights, HEIGHTS.
Okay.
It used to be called Philadelphia Futures, but they merged. They're now much larger. They have a much broader scope, and they're able to impact more students. They basically take first generation students from middle school now all the way into and through college. And they identify individuals who are self-motivated, but they provide all the resources necessary for them to succeed: counseling, supplemental tutoring, SAT training, college counseling, college selection counseling. They also provide programs while they're in college to help enhance the retention
Right.
and graduation rates in college. And they have the data to show that they are successful. And based on that data, Rachel and I decided to make a contribution. And in the same breath, they turned around and said, "How about being a mentor?"
Mm.
And that was about 8 years ago, and happened to develop this relationship, as you mentioned, with this very fine young man when he was a junior in high school. And now he is a human resources professional at a large corporation in New York City, happily married and on his way to a very successful professional and personal life.
That's great. That's amazing. And it's both personally rewarding to be part of that. It's also very different to give a piece of yourself away. And it's different than showing up and writing a check in an event, or even just mailing a check into an organization. So,
Wayne, I want to interject. I started off by talking about my 40 years doing cancer research, impacting, thousands of lives. But I think my mentoring of this young man is probably the most important thing I've ever done personally.
wow. That, that's got to be really personally fulfilling, and that's those are big words coming from somebody who's accomplished so much, Steve. So, um, so let's talk about another area. So, I mean, climate change. How do we approach that? What are the moves that, like you and I as lay people? I mean, you and I have the three of us have these conversations about, I'm feeling like I'm got a little badge to wear now because my wife's driving an electric car. But so, but then we have to have conversations about where they got the lithium to build the battery. So it's the climate change conversation. How are you thinking about that, and how do we use philanthropy to try to change behaviors to bring about, the easing of climate change?
So I think there are a couple of things. For me personally, I can't sit around and talk about climate change and eat animals. It's that simple, because I think that our industrial agricultural complex has a profound impact on climate change. And so for me, that's my first step.
Okay.
Separate from that, Steve and I have talked about this, and we all can help by getting EVs and solar panels and whatever we can handle as a family. But we feel that the real change needs to come from policy change. And so there are several organizations that we donate to that try to have that kind of an impact. And part of that is, they're charitable arms, and part of that is not. And so that's one of the things that we've been working on. And hopefully we can have an impact, a small impact. Right.
Yeah, and agreeing with everything that Rachel said, I'm not quite the extreme on a diet basis as she is, although I have, for purely environmental reasons, not health reasons, stopped eating red meat for the last 3 years. And as I mentioned earlier, I have focused and tried to do what I can using my voice as a health professional, as a physician, to get the word out to a variety of stakeholders, including some of our representatives in Washington, D.C., about the importance of climate change, not only on general health, but on cancer in particular, because that's my area of expertise, and I can speak to where that's had real impact.
Yeah.
But in a more general sense, I think I've developed some guiding principles around combating climate change, which are my personal North Stars.
Okay.
One is to, we're both scientists, Rachel and I, and one is to, use data and use scientifically established targets for reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. So number one is look at the data, follow the science. That's the most important thing, and then act on it. We want to focus on investments that raise energy efficiency standards and equally dramatically expand the supply of clean and largely renewable energy sources. We want to we want to do all of this with a transition to a sustainable economy. So whatever we do, we should not adversely expose those that may be impacted, such as those in the fossil fuel industry or those who are auto mechanics working on combustion engines. They're vulnerable as we make these transitions. So we need to pay attention to their needs as well, their needs for jobs and economic security. So the economic growth has to proceed along a sustainable and egalitarian path. And those are the principles that I've tried to keep in mind whenever I make choices about actions around climate change, whether it's writing a check to an organization to support their efforts to change political will through the ballot box, or through other organizations to try to change policy and increase awareness across a larger population.
Right. Rachel, are there any kind of guiding principles that you would add to Steve's list on that there?
No, I think that it's a big complex problem, and there are so many different ways to attack it. And I don't have too much more to add to what Steve said.
Right. And I do think, I mean, you mentioned, Rachel, the big business agricultural meat products, and you're right. I mean, at the end of the day, for hundreds or thousands of years, diets were largely things that were grown in the ground, not necessarily on the ground. So maybe you would go out and hunt, but you had to go chase down the meat, as opposed to it being readily farmed and available in massive proportions and quantities at every Costco and Acme and Wegmans. And your point is well taken, because when we do that, then we are multiplying the sheer quantity of the carbon footprint output from the waste and from the processing of those
Right.
those meat byproducts. And that's a conversation I can have much more intelligently today because of my relationship with Steve Averbuch and Rachel Rivest, and I would have not been able to articulate that a number of years ago.
Yeah.
So,
what was the statistic you cited yesterday about the football field?
So when
this is a good one.
So 2 football fields will people eating standard American diets will support 1 person. 2 football fields of land. When people are eating plant-based, 2 football fields will feed 14 people.
Oh, wow.
And that's consistent with other data I've seen where, the inefficiency of processing our nutrition through an animal is about, 16-fold less efficient. So it makes sense. I mean, animals get big and strong by eating grass and vegetables. They don't eat meat.
Yeah, I know. I forget the movie that you asked me to watch a few years ago. That
Game Changers.
Game Changers.
Yep. And these huge hulking human beings, and I think there was this guy who's he's lifting like the equivalent of a vehicle over his head or something, and he's like, look at it. People say I'm as strong as an ox. What do ox eat? Yeah, oxen don't eat meat.
That's right.
They eat grass.
Yeah.
So, but it also helps in another way. I mean, besides being healthy for you, et cetera. But in that, it's hard for me to wait for politicians to make changes, for the economy to change, and it's a process. and it's frustrating because I want it all done now. So it makes me feel better that what I put into my body, what I put in my mouth, is the right choice for climate change.
Yeah.
And it's the one thing I have control over. I don't have a control over a whole lot, but I can control that.
Yeah. Well, and I think that that's the values have to start with the person in the mirror, right? And it's, and
That's right.
wars have been fought when we try to enforce one set of values on a group of people that doesn't want
Right.
that set of values imposed. And we can have, we'd be here all day talking about how religion has manipulated that whole process. But it's we have to be able to live with the person in the mirror and live aligned with our values with the person in the mirror first, and then we can go out and have conversations.
Right.
And,
Couldn't agree more.
I just want to also say, for people who might be listening to this and thinking, man, there's no way I could do that, is that it doesn't, just decreasing a little of the meat products in one's diet has a huge impact on the
Yeah.
quantity of CO2 that you're contributing to. It doesn't have to be this extreme that I'm happy doing to have an impact. So
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, and today, thankfully, there's more vegan or vegetarian options available, and more restaurants, and more places that to get information and get educated about those kinds of things. Um, that's are there other areas that you would? I mean, we touched a little bit on the vegan lifestyle and that kind of thing. Rachel, would you want to go any deeper on that side of things and some of the educational work that you've done in that area?
Um, I haven't done a whole lot of education work. I have helped lead a local group of people who are plant-based and are curious about being plant-based. And we have potlucks, and we educate people about how to go about it. It's there are groups like that. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I am increasingly starting to focus on industrial agriculture, regenerative agriculture, so that we can protect our soils and have a future for farming.
Right. No, that's really good. Actually, my daughter and one of her friends are going down to Florida in a couple of weeks to visit a regenerative farm that does a lot of work with local food pantries. And
That's
so they're
great.
they're combining regenerative farming with local food pantries, and they're really making great progress. They've got some great corporate partners that are coming alongside and helping them really scale what they're doing down there. And that's we support an organization, Bushels of Blessings, here locally, and so it's the executive director from that organization and our daughter CJ who are going down to make this visit. So it's we're looking forward to see what they learn and bring back for use in southern New Jersey and for the tri-state region that they support.
Right.
So that's
Great.
good stuff. Let's maybe transition to, as you're thinking about the future and thinking about where things go from here. How would you see things materializing or altering in the years to come with regard to how you approach this stuff in these areas?
Talking about the philanthropy in particular, or these?
I would think philanthropy in particular, and then maybe we also touch on backtrack and talk about the pharma space and some of the oncology medicines, and where do you see some of that space evolving, even after your retirement?
Yeah, well, I've continued my consulting through retirement, but that is really a very minor part of my retirement life right now. And
Right.
I think I speak for Rachel as well. We really want to focus very much. We come across as being a little selfish, but right now we have only a limited amount of good quality time. We're both in good health. We want
Mhm.
to we want to optimize that by doing the things that a lot of retired people do, and enjoy traveling,
Yeah.
reading books that we've never read before. We're both very invested in continuous learning, through adult education courses and online courses, but while giving back, as we've already discussed, to causes that we believe very strongly in, whether it's climate change or supporting educational needs of underserved populations. So I think, that becomes a full plate as looking into the future of how we want to spend our time. We've
Right.
recently renovated a home in Western Massachusetts with a house on the water and kayaks and hopefully a little sailboat. And we're going to enjoy some quality time too. So I've really not, I don't think I'm in a position to speak to the future of pharma and biotech right now. It's to the extent that I am still engaged, it's vital. It'll continue to do its thing. People should not have unreasonable expectations of what comes out of it. We have a very complex healthcare system,
Mhm.
and there are things that need to be fixed to best serve people
Yeah.
around that. And pharma is just a small part of that. It's not just about drug prices. It's about the whole
Mhm.
system, the whole insurance system, the delivery systems, the incentives and the disincentives.
Yeah.
So I would say that that's probably where, in terms of healthcare, we should focus in the same breath, talking about making sure our environment stays healthy for
Yeah.
people.
And so much of that is driven, so much of the healthcare needs and the disease issues are driven by diet and healthcare and the way we live. Are we get enough exercise? We get enough sunlight, getting outside, being active. Um, well, that's great.
Reducing air pollution. Air pollution accounts for 14% of lung cancer worldwide.
Mm, wow.
Um,
Okay.
that's not an insignificant number of people that are developing lung cancer as a
Yeah.
result of something that we can correct.
Yeah. That's well, that and I think today more than ever we're seeing issues with the availability of clean drinking water and the pollutants of ground aquifers and things like that. I know that where we used to live in South Jersey, they've released some things recently that, hey, please don't drink the water coming out of your spigot. And it's kind of adjacent to old DuPont land, and DuPont's got its own sins of the past that have been that are known quantities, and that stuff hasn't been necessarily brought to the forefront in southern New Jersey. But when the local folks can't drink the water that's coming out of their tap, and we have one family that we know that I think 3 of their kids have had some form of cancer. And they're just maybe within a mile of that DuPont plant, and so there's those kinds of things that however, whatever needs to be done to make sure that families can drink the water coming out of the tap and live better lives is
So I
absolutely.
think, Wayne, I think we're all saying the same thing. We can't continue doing business as usual in the way it was done in the 50s and 60s
Yeah.
and even, more recently. So this goes back to the political will and the economic drivers to ensure that we're not dumping chemicals into our aquifers, that we're reducing emissions, that we're
Yeah.
electrifying. I know, very well in terms of the issues in New Jersey and offshore wind.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the opponents are providing incredible story misinformation and disinformation about
Yeah.
the harmful effects of offshore wind, which is not based in any science.
Hmm.
And we need to really step back and say, what kind of future are we leaving for our children?
There are areas that you would have anticipated that we would have touched on at this stage in our conversation that we should touch on.
I wanted to get back to your question about philanthropy and our view going forward. We were very fortunate, Wayne, that at near the end of Steve's career, you brought up a donor advised fund, the idea of that for us. We didn't know what it was. Not only did it save us a ton in taxes, but it created this pot of money that we can now use to help others and to donate. And we were originally thinking that fund would be used and we would divvy it up over however long we just were hoping to live. And then we said, that's crazy because people are in need now. So we have been in accelerating our giving because people are in need, and it's silly to have it just sit there.
Yeah.
In addition, I just wanted to touch on one thing. So when we look at as our future and our retirement, we have one son, we don't have five. And we wanted to, we joke about this, Wayne, this, if we get hit by a bus, what's going to happen to him, and what are we going to leave for him? And we believe in Warren Buffett's thinking around this, that you want to leave enough for your kids so that they can do anything, so they have choices as they're creating their life. But you don't want to leave them so much money that they could do nothing.
Yeah.
So we've been fortunate that amount, he's getting older, so he needs less education. He's still getting some, is not necessary for him. And it can go to others who aren't fortunate and need a start in their life. So not only is our giving going to be coming from the donor advised fund, which you helped us set up, but from other sources of our investments as time goes on.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I just want to reinforce that. That's exactly right. We're very proud of our son. He's very independently minded.
Too independent.
Sometimes too independent, we wish he would call his mother more often. But
my mom wishes the same thing, for the record.
But there's no expectation that he's going to have a large or even sizable or however you want to characterize inheritance. He wants to be independent. And as Rachel said, we're there to support his needs as he is required for education, for his career enabling. But then he wants to do it all on his own. And we applaud that. And that does allow us to put more of our funds into the donor advisory vehicle or some other vehicle by which we can help others, and to accelerate that, and a lot of our discussions with you on our financial planning is the three compartments of what do we need throughout the rest of our lifetime for the quality of life and our needs, and being confident that we have enough there, leaving enough for some beneficiaries that are consistent with the Warren Buffett principle that Rachel cited, but the remainder really being focused toward people and causes that could benefit from our contributions. So that's how we view our whole picture here. And I think, as Rachel said, the DAF as a vehicle and other guidance from you has really helped us accomplish those three pillars in a very successful way.
Yeah. Well, and when we stop thinking about financial independence or retirement as a number and start thinking about it in terms of impact, then we gain a greater vision to, for many of our clients, and you, Steve, you included, you worked longer than you needed to. Like you could have retired sooner, but you were doing meaningful work on projects you're passionate about with people you cared about, and so you kept going, and that enabled you to put away more. And now that we're thinking about not just impact during your lifetime, like you said, Rachel, you're accelerating some of the giving, but you're also thinking differently about philanthropy after you're gone. And so it allows you to not just run to the end zone financially, but run through the end zone and into the locker room in terms of impact, where there will be people who are benefiting, not just while the two of you are still here, but for years after your death. There will be gifts being given to organizations that are making mankind, making things better for mankind across the world. And when we can think about that in terms of the long-term impact and multi-generational impact, things magnify. I mean, it's easier to say hey, if we put X amount of dollars in your son's Roth IRA this year, how much that's worth, because he has so much more time to accumulate wealth than you do or I do. when we can take that and put it in a philanthropic model, we get magnified impact over a longer period of time when we think longer than one lifespan too. So
Right.
that's great. That's
In
good stuff.
addition, one final thing is that we have been, it's been slow because our son is focused on getting his life started, but we have been more engaging with him about our philanthropy, because at some point he's going to be more part of this in a bigger way. And so I understand his focus on his current situation and his current life, but I don't want him to get hit with a ton of bricks down the road when there is. So we're and that's a work in progress, both for us as to what kind of guidance are we providing for down the road, and also for how we're engaging him.
Yeah.
Well, and being sensitive to when he's ready. Right now,
Right.
he's not ready to take that on.
Right.
And you can't force it. You really have to let it happen organically, let him come to appreciate when and if he will assume stewardship for philanthropy down the road, and to roll with it according to who he is and what his values are.
Well, yeah, and we're talking about a young guy who, first of all, independent was he 16 or 17 when he went to Alaska and hiked Alaska with one of his
13.
13. I'm sorry. 13 years old, no adults. He and a buddy.
No, he went with a group, but he flew by himself.
Okay.
He changed in O'Hare Airport by himself.
It was a part of a program, but he got there all by himself.
Okay. So flew to Alaska by himself, and then they're out like hiking on glaciers and doing these things that you're just, I mean, our son said that he wanted to go skydiving, and my wife said, do not, whatever you do, don't tell me before you go, just tell me after it's done. And
and our son's a rock climber, and he gets the same thing.
Ice climber.
From his mother, let us know after you've done it.
Right. But the other side of it is that so you have passed on a gene of generosity and a gene of philanthropy to him in the way, how he's pursued career and giftings, because he's done all kinds of rescue training and, avalanche rescue trainings, and not just learning himself, but to be part of it, but training others to do it. He did something it was like an Outward Bound type organization that was taking inner city kids out into the wilderness for weeks at a time and all that. So, he may not have a fully engaged interest in writing the checks to philanthropy, but he still is living this super generous lifestyle of care for others and seeking to enrich the lives of other people and expand their experiences. So, and that's something he got, he got from you guys, and it took root really early in his life. So,
and we have sometimes said, here's a small pot of money, and you decide, you figure out how you would like that to be donated. Like provide names of organizations that are meaningful to your values and your worldview. And, we can carry that just to start getting the brain thinking in that way.
Right.
Yeah. Rachel just reminded me, and not to prolong this, but another thing we've done, it's a small thing, but every year around the holiday season, we don't buy gifts for anybody, even our close family. But what we do is we send out a blast email to our extended family. It includes nieces, nephews, some, people on, maybe there's 20 people on this list. And they say, and we say, your gift this year, we've done this for several years, will be a donation of $500 to a cause that you choose. And then we distribute that $500 out of our donor advisory fund
in their name
as their holiday gift.
Right.
And so you add it all up, it's several $1,000s that we're giving on behalf, but it's also letting people know that this is how, and at least making them aware that there are causes that, as a gift to others, this is something they could do, or at least they know that we're doing it because this is what we value.
Yeah.
So it's a way of spreading the word as to how to do it.
Well, and I think that, I mean, the reality is 100 years from now, people don't remember us. But when we can touch the lives of people who can't return the favor, we have the ability to create ripples in eternity and ripples for generations to come. And I think that's an area that's, I certainly see exemplified in how you two approach life and philanthropy. And I mean, I go back to even your long-term work in the pharmaceutical industry. And I mean, the mission statement of the pharmaceutical industry is to take deadly diseases and turn them into chronic treatable illnesses. And there's some naturopath out there who'll say, see, they don't want to cure diseases. They just want to sell drugs. Yes, but before you cure a disease, you have to take it from ending people's lives and letting them live with the disease and have it be chronic and treatable. Something that you're still here. We're still improving. We're still working on cures. But the key thing here, and I mean, we see it in oncology space all the time, is the oncology space is evolving so rapidly that sometimes if we can just take a patient and keep them alive and give them a few more years, yes, they're getting that time with their family and in their community, but they're also buying time for something else to come along that may be a cure. And that is, that is crucial to this process. May and I were at an event last night that was celebrating the lives of a couple of people who died from some gene. It was a cancer that's impacted by some gene mutation, and they're raising funds to help families who are affected by this. But part of what was talked about is the need to just extend the life for other people who have this gene mutation, so that hopefully new treatments will arise that can cure the disease. And that ultimately is that's a part that has to be a part of the conversation. So anyway, thank you two so much for being here. My final question is always, what does envisioning more mean to you? So when we say envision more, to Steve and Rachel, what does that bring to mind for each of you individually in terms of how you're thinking about it today?
For me, it means keeping my mind open. So whether it's learning new things or being open to new cultures, new people, it's being open.
Okay, that's great. That's good stuff.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add, other than trying to optimize what we're already doing, and to know that our actions will make a difference and can make a difference, and never underestimate that, even though you may not get the immediate return. But as you said, there are ripple effects, and that can take many different forms. So I think we just have to continue to keep our foot on the pedal and pay attention to the things that we need to make better around us. And
yeah, that's great. Thank you both so much for being here. What I know of you two and what I think we've heard today is some themes are living according to your set of values, having some things that are kind of your North Star in terms of how you view the world, how you think about the world, how you think about your actions within it. Like being a lifelong learner, continuing to read books, attend college lectures, be part of organizations and learning, even when the career is over and you're in retirement, you're continuing to be lifelong learners, and then keeping an open mind, listening and following the data as it were in life and in a manner consistent with your values. So Steve and Rachel, thank you so much for being here today and sharing with us here on the Envision More podcast.
Our pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks, Wayne.
Thank you for listening to the Envision More podcast with Wayne Wagner Jr. of Visionary Wealth Management. We hope you were encouraged and inspired by the conversation today. If you want to dig deeper into the show notes or Wayne's work at Visionary, you can find us at envisionmore.com. That's Envision with a Z. Advisory services are provided through Wealth Plan Investment Management. Wealth Plan Investment Management and Visionary Wealth Management are separate entities. The content is developed from sources believed to be providing accurate information. The information in this material is not intended as tax or legal advice. Please consult legal or tax professionals for specific information regarding your individual situation. The opinions and material provided are for general information and should not be considered a solicitation for the purchase or sale of any security. Thanks for listening.